Have you heard the word codependency and maybe you're not sure exactly what that means? Well, today, our guest, Dr. Frieda Birnbaum, is going to help us understand that better. She'll help you know if you are in a codependent relationship, if you know someone who is, and what can be done about that. Dr. Frieda is actually a return guest for us. The first time she was on the show, she spoke to us about becoming a mom again at the age of 60 when she had her twins. She is today going to tell us more about codependency, which is more in line with her background in psychotherapy and psychology. She is the author of a book called Life Begins at 60, A New View of Motherhood, Marriage, and Reinventing Ourselves, as well as the book What Price Power, an in-depth study of the professional women in a relationship. She's also just recently launched a podcast that's called The Doctor Frieda Show, Pushing the Limits, which I hope you will check out. And we will make sure we link to all of these things in the show notes. So double check that. But today, welcome Dr. Frieda to the show. And I can't wait for you to hear more about what she's going to tell us about this really important topic that I think a lot of people may have some involvement, whether they know it or not. So enjoy the show. Hello, this is Marijo Tinlin from the Teaching Your Toddler podcast. I am so excited today because we have a return guest. Dr. Frieda Birnbaum is with us today. The last time we had her on the show, she spoke to us about becoming a mom later in life. But today we're going to lean on her expertise. And so today she's going to talk to us about codependency. Dr. Birnbaum, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your and this particular subject.
Thank you so much. I have a podcast, the Doctor Frieda Show. I'm, media psychoanalyst, psychologist, trying to start a show up. Who knows if that's going to work, but that's a little bit about me. And I'm looking forward to being on your show today. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you. So today we're going to talk about a little bit of a heavy subject. I think it's probably something that people don't maybe not even know about or even know that is happening to them. So tell us a little bit about codependency.
Yes, that's a very heavy topic. We often don't know that it's happening to us or that we're actually doing it. And we're so invested in it that it's hard to get away. But here are the main traits, the main character traits. It's usually somebody who finds another person who's needy, another person who they feel sorry for, that they feel that they can fix. And that's when the problem becomes hard, because even in therapy, you can't always fix. And that is where we start the relationship. And then there are the two people, actually, that the other person looks forward to taking. Uh, and that person is really gaining in self-esteem and growing, while the other person is the caretaker and is losing a sense of themselves. So one is gaining and one is losing, and it's perpetual. And even if when I talk about it, it's difficult because I can feel it. I can feel the discomfort of having these type of relationship that gets so stuck and embedded, and people become so miserable. One loses sense of self-respect, and the other one gains too much respect. So instead of this equality, it becomes this hierarchy where one person keeps growing and evolving, and the other person is the therapist that keeps losing herself in this situation. And it's not necessarily always the woman and the man, although women as children are taught to be caregivers more than the men. But when we talk about codependency, men are codependent on being taken care of. So there's this coupling back and forth. And research has shown that men actually are the ones that are more codependent than women are. So figure that one out. That was a shock to me too.
That
So I
is
always think of,
shocking.
the little woman, are you happy now? Or am I doing anything wrong? What do you want? That kind of thing. And now, by the way, I read an article this morning. I forgot the name, that they're going back to the traditional way of coupling in marriage, which means it's not forgetting about feminism and equality, but the woman has her traditional role. And this is so uncomfortable for me also. The man is the one that sets all the rules, that she listens to whatever he wants. And her goal is to take care of the children in the house and to make him happy. Where is she? I don't know. I didn't read that part of it. So that's,
So you said that
you know,
that's a trend that they're starting to see
that's a
now?
trend that they're showing. Are we going backwards? Maybe a little bit. Maybe a
Hmm.
little bit. So, yes, we need feminine, masculine. We need
Hmm.
that. We need to not be too equal. We don't want to have this in the middle that everyone has masculine and feminine traits. We want to feel feminine or masculine around our partners. So that we have to, hold on to and not lose that essence. But when we talk about emotional standards
Hmm.
and emotional equality, that's different, in the workforce, with your career, with your lifestyle, with your planning for the future. That should be equal. But we can't lose the feminine, masculine traits that we have with one another because soon, with all that's going on with in vitro, we may not even need each other. So we have to be careful of that. Pretty scary right there.
It is. And so how would a person in a couple understand that that imbalance is happening versus just a personality? Maybe my personality is more nurturing and I'm okay with that versus actually having it be destructive for myself.
That's a good question. The important thing is to set boundaries. And when you have that question and you know that answer, that I'm not losing myself there. So let's see, you have a mental checklist. Okay, uh, I am where I want to be. My friends, my peers are pretty much in sync with my own identity and support who I am. I don't feel negative about myself. I'm not taking responsibility or personalizing the other person. Okay, that's that checklist. When you look at that, you say, okay, I'm there, I'm in charge. I want to go where I want to go. I'm doing what I want to do. As long as you have a voice, then that's okay. The problem is when the other person has more of a voice and you're hearing that person's voice and you want to be a people pleaser, that's when you have to step back. Yeah.
That's a great distinction, I think, for people to understand, you know what, as long as I am still feeling positive about myself, feeling like I get to do what I can do, not being controlled by someone, I think that makes a huge difference. So that those would be those gut checks for someone that's listening to this and wondering, am
Yeah.
I in that situation or not?
Yes, and a lot of us are, and we don't know it, and we're trapped because, oh, we see even our children. Look, our children are happy. They're thriving, and there are parents that will give up their lives, their own relationship, their friendships, uh, their other family of origin, just for that child. Everything is centered around that child's happiness. What happens is that that child becomes codependent as well because that's what they're used to as well. So there's this vicious circle of what it means to be happy and what it means to have people around you happy. And research has shown that authoritarian parents are the best kind because they allow the child to make decisions while they're supervising the child. So there's this back and forth while the child is growing independent, they're also being supervised. Now, one of the worst parents are the submissive parents, which means that they let the child do whatever they want to do. That's not good because they don't know what they're doing. We just got a puppy yesterday. That puppy's looking to me what to do. I have to show her where to go, what to do, because once not, she's going to have these horrible habits and I will be complaining. And then the other kind of parent, the authoritative parent. And that means that that parent is just the authority. Child has no say. The parent is disciplinary. You have to do this, you can't do that. And there's a fear factor involved, and there's a coldness involved, and there's this lack of nurturing. We're like plants. We grow when we're nurtured, and we're watered, and we're given love. And it's a vital part of any relationship. And then this other relationship with the children is the helicopter parents. I'm sure you know about that, and that's somebody who just does everything. I remember years ago, I went into my children's class and they had a project due. And parents were invited to watch. And it was one of these billboard things. I don't know, not a billboard, but these huge
Poster, yeah.
poster. Thank you. And They had to draw something, I forgot what it was, and explain something. But the one thing I do remember is everybody's work was like a work of art, like a professional. These kids in no way could have done this. My kids looked like they took some chalk and just blacked it out. You couldn't even see tell what it was. And I wasn't sure if I should be embarrassed by their work or feel good that I didn't. Some of the parents even hired people, artists, to do the work for them. I was like aghast. I said, this is not fair. Now, I do belong to a community that's kind of affluent. So the kids do get pretty much catered, the best tutors. It's not fair. I was thinking the other day, we should not only have free colleges, but we should have equal opportunities to study for these colleges, where people who have more money shouldn't get the benefit of getting better tutors. Because
Mm.
it really doesn't show your child's IQ. But anyway, I'm getting off. But the thing is that the helicopter parents create the most codependent kids, as you can imagine. Because who's going to do this for me? You have to do this for me. I went to the doctor when my children were little, and one of the women in the other room said to the nurse, "Could you put the clothes on for my child?" She must have had a nanny. So the other woman, the nurse went out and said, "She wants me to put her kids' clothes on for her." Because that always stuck with me. So that's the mindset of entitlement that really doesn't benefit but produces the most codependency.
So when you say you're creating a codependent kid, that means not only are they dependent on you, but now in their future relationships as adults, they will potentially create or become that submissive partner then as well.
Absolutely, they will seek someone out. And
Mm,
the word gaslighting, they'll be the victim. And meanwhile, the other person will do everything for them. So they seek that person out and they keep that person very close, which the other person doesn't have friends or relatives. And people wonder what happened. And there's two different sets of rules. They don't want to go to therapy. They don't want to fix anything. They don't talk about future plans. They do whatever they want. So, yes, they seek it out, but the other person seeks out someone that is going to use them in some way
mhm.
too. So there's a reason that people have this agenda and they hold on to it. They don't want to change it because then it changes their pattern of what they feel comfortable with, and they seek that out. And it used to be in my practice that women mostly came. The men who were controlling them, that's why they came, didn't want to come because they were happy with the way they were. They had no complaints. Matter of fact, they feared coming in. They didn't want change. But I always saw them very smooth and really knew how to present themselves very well. They were very good. Today, men are coming in as well because as men have become more nurturing and roles are not as strictly divided, they have some commonality, some common viewpoints as their partners have. And sometimes it's not female, but today it's their partners, excuse me. And so therefore, it's becoming more confusing today what the agendas are. But in the past, it was women were more bullied, and their lifestyles were not as colorful or not as safe, not as meaningful. And they didn't have the security. They lacked a sense of security as well. So that comes into the agenda today that makes it different a little bit. Women have become more powerful and more secure, but that still always gets in the way. So there are a lot of variables that get in the way as a narcissistic mother, by the way, will want her child to be codependent.
Mhm.
And
I was
that
going to
comes,
ask you about narcissism and
yeah,
also
yeah,
borderline, right? A couple of,
exactly.
mhm.
Because narcissism has to do with being powerful and getting attention and self-esteem. Well, through her child, she can get recognition. See, men often don't have to do that. They have their careers. Often women who stay home have to manipulate in order to be recognized. And they're the most competitive too. If women don't feel a sense of accomplishment, they're more competitive with another female than someone who's going out and work and having careers. She doesn't have to prove anything. So these women go ahead and prove that through their own children. And that's sad to say because it takes the children's ability away from them. It takes away the ability for the woman to to cope, child to cope. And the happiest children actually are children that have mothers who work outside the home. They're the most confident. So by staying home, and when I went back to school at a time when women didn't do that, I was told, what about your children? And I was made to feel like I was a bad mother. And now, years and years later, like what else is new? Who isn't working? But I read that your children are more confident, and young men marry women who are more like their mothers. So if the mother's working and accomplishing and doing both, it's not easy because women often want to go back when they do come home to have the feminine role of doing the chores and making dinner and taking care of the children. So they have two. So be careful what you ask for because now we have two careers and we want to make sure the children are happy first. So, it's getting much more complicated what codependency is. I can go on and on if you want me to about anxiety and parents who make other people look better and they feel that they're not as competent. And these are anxious parents, and then the children role model, it's not what you say, but what you see. So
Mm.
these kids, the parents, it's like death of a salesman. Now I forgot his name, that he said, go out there, you can do it. But what did he really do? And his friend, who was an attorney, went to school and studied and did all that. So his father was not doing well at the end. I forgot his name. And
Willie something, yeah.
Lily, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, that's it. Good. And he also role modeled and he didn't do well at the end. So children, of course, watch you. They
Hmm.
watch you, and what you say goes over their head. It doesn't mean as much. So we need to fix ourselves first before we can fix the children. And our parents didn't read the book either, so it goes generational. Nobody knows what they're doing, basically. That's
I want
that's
to
the
go
real
back.
problem.
I want to go back a little bit because I think what you were talking about is really important. Where we, as parents, and specifically maybe mothers, we do sometimes sacrifice because we think, oh, our child is happy. And so, what are some of those, like, besides what you were just talking about, potentially creating a codependent child, but what else do we do to our children when we sort of sacrifice ourselves for their quote unquote happiness?
Well, what we really do is we become unhappy and they see it. And so there's tension. The big thing about having a family and being at home is love. That's the one word. To be carefree. It's all about memories. It's not even about accomplishments so much. It's really not about success. And it's not about money. When you look back, you don't say, oh, this is how much money I made, or this is what I bought. None of that really. Or what school you got into, but oh, we went to the beach that summer. We went ahead and we went on a boat for the first time, or we went fishing, or we had our grandparents over and we celebrate so and so's birthday together, and we went hiking. Those are the good feel experiences that you really can't pay for in any way. It's connecting with another human being. And when you have that availability, that opportunity, then you have that core value of going on to something in your life that's going to be meaningful. And you can always buy a smaller house, smaller car, less cars, less toys, less room for the bigger the. A patient said to me the other day, every time I buy a house in the bigger rooms, I fill it up. I have no space.
That's what
So I
we
said,
do, right?
that's what we do. We keep filling it up, our closets.
Yeah,
We need to buy stuff.
right. So when you frame it like that, as parents are thinking, am I sacrificing things? Am I doing this for the sake of children, then but when you're framing it around like the memories that you're creating, if you think, oh my gosh, I'm creating bad memories this way, then you start to think maybe I need to question what's going on in my relationship. Maybe I need to ask. And so if someone's listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, I am in this situation, what do they do?
But think about the fathers who are traveling and the kids don't see them. The fathers are exhausted. They're making money for the family. The more they're out there, they're missing out on precious moments with their children. Their
Mm.
children are missing out on them. So, what is more important, those moments or making some more money? We don't realize that money and that time, time is our most important commodity, our most important asset. You can't bring that back.
Mm-mm.
So instead of having money to take a plane and go somewhere, go in your backyard and have that more time with your family. Make a campfire or sleep out under a tent or something. The kids love that stuff. Going to a fancy restaurant they don't care about anyway. It's boring to them. Traveling somewhere, so what, doesn't mean anything. So that's really where we need to go. I forgot your answer, your question. Was that your
Well, if
question?
if
No.
someone's hearing this and they decide, oh my gosh, I am in a codependent relationship. Maybe I'm the codependent, maybe I'm not. But if they're listening, what should they do? I mean, seek therapy? Is there things they can read and look at? What else should they do?
First thing to do really is reassess who you are and where you're going. Are you in the right place for yourself? Because if you're not, you're always going to distract yourself. It's like an addiction, like any other addiction. I'm doing this other thing. I don't have to think about myself, that I went to school and went to college and I'm not doing anything with it. I'm taking care of somebody else, or I'm being emotionally abused or physically abused by somebody else. But I'm supposed to be in this relationship. So the first thing you can do, forget about therapy. Think to yourself about, is this the place I wanted to be? Is this the direction I wanted to be? What did I really want to do? It doesn't mean having children can't be that you can do it all. It's not true. You can't do it all. Some days you have to take turns doing it. I waited till my children were in kindergarten, so they were in school, and I went back to school. Life is long enough that you can do both. And then when you're healthy, only then can you be in a healthy relationship, because then you want that to be filled in the right way. If you're not healthy, you're clueless. You don't know. You can go to therapy for 30 years. It doesn't really matter. I'm
Hmm.
telling you, I should know. But seriously, so you have to really, when you're feeling right, then that person feels right or that person feels wrong. Otherwise, you'll get the wrong person in. And then the children will be upset because there's tension in the house. There's conflict in the house. And don't kid yourself. No way can we say, when the children are asleep, we'll talk about it. Sure, when you want to get it out on that person, that's it. Those emotions, you want to get that person. You want to make that person feel bad now. You don't want to wait, because later you won't have that in you as much.
Hmm.
So, emotional constraints are very hard to be able to maneuver. I've had couples come out of my office, and right in the waiting room, they're already screaming at each other. They couldn't even leave the house or the office to get it out of their system. So it's something that is a conditioned response, and you have to uncondition the response. So you can think the thoughts, but acting on it, or count to 10, or go out of the room, or go out of the house, get in the car, whatever that takes. And then it's how you say something, not what you say. And if you can verbalize it in such a way, and I believe that couples once a week should have a meeting together and write down their agenda, what it is that is in conflict, and be civil about it. Not when you're arguing and you're emotionally disconnected, because then you just want to hurt the other person. But when you're comfortable and that anger has left you, then you can make constructive criticisms. It makes me feel bad when you say this. So instead of saying you start with the word I, and you go back to that person yourself. And then you say to them, how do you feel about that? Give that other person, I didn't know it made you feel that, or I did that on purpose. And so I did that on purpose back to you. How do we stop it? So there's a verbal connection of listening because we don't listen to our partners. Just the fact of saying what they just said to us is a huge experience, especially
Repeating it
men.
back is what you're saying.
Repeating it back, yes.
Hmm.
So especially men, men are very impatient. There are few words. They think women talk too much and they turn you off. They really do. But the problem is they don't help with making the changes. So if they can do that, they'll be surprised that they're going to get their needs met too. It's not one-sided. If you have a partner that's in a good place, they're going to give back to you as well. Otherwise, you're missing out, and you don't know that you're missing out till you experience something that is going to fill you up in some way. If you have a void, you can't give. There's nothing to give to that other person. So once a week, sit down on that couch, look at each other, make a list, and at the moment, if it becomes volatile, if there's, you physically leave seriously and come back.
Give
Yeah,
yourself a break. Yeah.
give yourself a break.
Hmm. Hmm. That I mean, I think that's probably a hard thing for someone to think about if they've not been communicating like that. It's hard to think about trying to implement that, but it sounds like a really good way to do it because again, like you said, it's not in the moment when they're emotional, when everything's sort of amped up, right? It's a quiet time. It's set
Yeah.
specifically for that communication, right?
Yes, because we have no choice when that happens at the time, but you have to train yourself. You have to talk
Mm.
to yourself. You have to have a vision of what you're going to do because you're right. When you're caught in the moment, forget about the vision. You just want to hurt that person. And it feels great, but you're going to get it back later. Don't worry. There'll be a
Yes,
way.
we'll come back.
Right? It'll come back at you double.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's amazing. I, I before I let you go, how can someone sort of create some boundaries that they've been maybe potentially violating their entire relationship? These boundaries have not existed or they've been completely overstepped. How do you sort of bring it back besides like what you were saying with these meetings? How can you sort of, I guess it's almost like retraining your partner to say, you can't do that anymore, or I don't feel like you can have that space or anyway, do you know what I mean? Like, how do you get
Yeah.
those boundaries back?
Well, one good way to do it, one quick way to do it is remember what the two of you were like when you first met. And you didn't know all this stuff about your in-laws and everybody else. They weren't part of the theme here, or the kids, or what was it like then? What were you, and it wouldn't be a bad idea when you have that meeting to start and talk about, remember we went to that museum, or remember we went for that trip and the car got stopped and we went into that little town and how delightful it was. Today we're spending a fortune and things don't, aren't so fantastic. So that's something that you can bring back into the relationship. And then when you're talking to each other, uh, when you're seeing that other person, is that person tired? Did that person just come home from work? Maybe they need a half an hour to detox, to respect that, not just open the door. The kids are screaming and go and take care of them. You think that this person who just ran to get a train, was he running for? To feel abused again? You have to think about that other person who's trying to pay for all this stuff if you're working from the home. So you have to give that person that kind of recognition. If you have children, daddy will be down in a certain time, and then you make it pleasant. You don't bring up problems. You wait. You make an appointment, 8 o'clock tonight. I'd like to talk to you about something. Okay. When he's rested and he's eaten, or she comes home and she wants time to make a few phone calls to do what her agenda is, when we clear the air with everything, because our minds are very complicated and there's always stuff going on and distracting us. It's very hard to focus in the moment, always. So when you do that for that other person, then you're going to get somebody who's there for you at the moment. So don't bounce on that person. And it's not even good for the children to hear that you're complaining about them. They feel like they did something wrong. They feel guilty. They're just being children, actually. So, yes, everybody has stuff in the office, stuff at home, things to vent. And that's part of having a partner in your life is to have a companion to talk to. That's a big part of it. but do so without assaulting that person emotionally. It's not that person's fault. Another big thing as I'm talking, I realize that our past experience has nothing to do with the person we're with. They're not responsible for the way we grew up or things that happened to us, but we connect a lot of our emotions to that person who's clueless, who has nothing to do with it. And so we're blaming that person. Oh, this happened, and I can't believe it, and where were you? And yeah, our parents set things up for us in such a way that made it difficult, or it was difficult for them, and we had to nurture them. I have a patient who had to take care of his elderly parents. When he got married, he said he promised himself he's not going to be the caretaker. Well, guess what? He had no choice, but he got very upset about it. And he let it out on his wife, who really didn't really want much more than anybody else would have wanted. But he was really over the top from his past. So we have to be careful about what we're bringing into this from our past. There's nothing to do with now. So several things. Give space to your partner when you come home, when they come home, to have that opportunity, and say ahead of time, do you mind a half an hour? I appreciate it that if you give me that time. Don't bring in your past to that partner. Talk about things away from the children and make a time frame for that as well. And even if you don't have children, you can still do that. You can have pleasant experiences together. And as I said, you can talk to each other once a week about the fun you had, because it's going to, relax you a little bit. And always supportive, pleasant conversations with or without your children.
I think that's really important about what you were talking with, pulling that in from your past. And again, that person has nothing to do with it potentially, right?
Nothing.
And so yeah, that I think we do bring a lot of baggage in from past relationships, past experiences, etc., right?
We do.
Yeah. Well, before I let you go, is there anything else that you think people should know about this particular topic about codependency?
I think before we get into any kind of relationship, we should have a relationship with ourselves. And we should be able to be the best we could possibly be so we can pick somebody healthy, because we often don't pick anybody healthy. And then what happens is that it makes it very easy. It's very, very simple. That person fits into who you are, or that person doesn't fit into who you are. And don't wait too long to make that decision, because it doesn't change. You're not going to fix anybody. You're just going to be struggling. And the only thing that's going to happen is you are going to lose a sense of who you are. That's the only person that's going to change, because that other person has an invested interest to stay where they are. Don't fix anybody.
Hmm. Awesome. Thank you. That's a great way to wrap it. I mean, we can't change anybody but ourselves, right?
No, we can't.
Yeah, awesome. Well,
Absolutely.
Dr. Birnbaum, thank you so much. Tell
My
us where we
pleasure.
can find you to make sure that the listeners can find you.
So it's Dr. Frieda. Now it's two Dr. Friedas. One is DOCTOR, Frieda, FRIEDA.com. And because I have two websites on, and the other is DR Frieda, FRIEDA.com. So two of them, whatever.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll make sure both of those are in the show notes so people can
Thank you.
find you. Absolutely. Well, again, thank you for joining us today. It's been a
My
pleasure to
pleasure,
have you as a
always.
return guest. Yes, thank you
Thank
again.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Be well. Take
You
care.
too. This has been the Teaching Your Toddler podcast with Marijo Tinlin. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll find us on our website at teachingyourtoddler.com, as well as on Facebook at Teaching Your Toddler, on Instagram, and on Twitter at Teaching Toddler. So join us again, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you so much.